If you enjoyed the channel and our video content and would like to support us, you can do this in a couple of ways. You can sign up to our Patreon site, which is a monthly subscription to one of our 4 tiers, each giving you something different from early access interviews up to exclusive unseen footage. There's also the option of a one-off donation via PayPal, which allows you the option to donate an amount of your choice. Both options really help to keep this channel going and to continue putting out regular content for you good folk. So please take a look at aircrewinterview.tv/donate, and I thank you in advance. Thank you and enjoy. So back for another Tornado Tales, and this time we're with F3 legend Roy Macintyre. So Roy, I think you have a story to share with our viewers.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for inviting me back onto AirQ Interview. My Tornado Tale comes from January 2000. I was on Treble 1 Squadron at the time, and it was my first deployment to Saudi Arabia as part of the force that was policing the no-fly zone over southern Iraq, as mandated by the United Nations. The RAF called it Operation Bolton, and this was my first go. Now, we were based at Al-Kaj, which is the main base in Saudi Arabia, which we used throughout the Iraq campaign all the way through to the Gulf War II. About an hour's flying time from the Iraq and Saudi border, and that's where the tanker was. So it's a long transit up, about an hour to refuel. Now, we were first out, as I say, our first deployment with Nav, and on our first trip, we were just going up as as a reserve aircraft, because they're quite long vol times, 3-4 hours, and things can go wrong. So usually the spare aircraft was held on the tanker and just sort of sat on the sidelines while the game was on. So that was us on the first day. Second day, we actually went up and had an avionics problem, so we turned back to Al-Kaj. So this was our third go, and we were really up for this. The first time we were actually going to go into Badlands. We were number 2 of the pair. And the idea is you go up to the tanker, refuel, everything okay. You then push into the southern Iraq airspace on time, coordinated with everyone else. And basically our job was to patrol a certain part of the airspace. Now, the United Nations mandate was there was to be no Iraqi aircraft airborne, and we were there to stop them doing it for this particular period of time in the 24-hour cycle. What we couldn't do anything about, and of course the Iraqis knew this, was any ground forces, and particularly surface-to-air missiles. So that they were a definite threat to us. Hopefully, and as it turned out, our intel people had quite a good handle on where the Iraqi surface-to-air missiles were, what types they were, and more importantly, the kind of doctrinal firing ranges that they would employ them. So based on that, hopefully good information, we could draw circles, missile engagement zones on our tactical display, and work out where the units were and a circle to stay outside of, and we should be all right. Now, it's a kind of balance between getting the job done, managing the risk of not going too close to these things, but also not being shepherded away into one sort of little corner by all these Iraqi surface-to-air missiles while we're supposed to be there policing the airspace. So it's a balance. Now, once we go into the area, what we do is kind of meander around as a loose pair, not being too predictable, so that the Iraqi ground forces couldn't work out, we're definitely heading this way, we might have a chance of a shot, but equally covering the whole area to show that we have a presence and that we are kind of dominating the airspace. So that was the philosophy behind it. And if all things being equal, we're in there, we go back to the tanker, we go back in and cover the whole of the allocated mission time, which could be 3 or 4 hours. And then at the end of it, we would withdraw and head back to Al-Kaj, all the time being ready to react if an Iraqi aircraft got airborne and looked like it was going to come into the no-fly zone, because then we would have rules of engagement which would have allowed us to engage it. So all in all, it was getting we were getting ready for the game. So up to the tanker, refuel, everything's looking good. We come off the tanker and we push north into Iraq. Now, I don't know if it was as a result of the first Gulf War or if it had always been like this, but it's quite easy from the air to see the Saudi-Iraq border.
Oh, wow.
Because there's a great big sand berm, as they called it, basically a big sand wall that was built. Now, as I say, it might have been there beforehand, but it was certainly reinforced as a result of the first Gulf War. So 20,000 feet as we push north, you could actually see quite clearly a line. We are now stepping into the Badlands. And myself and the nav are thinking, right, here we go, we're in. So we move up. We're watching the RHWR, we're watching our towed radar decoy control panel, because that will give us indications as well of anything looking at us, obviously looking out and coordinating with my leader. We've got data link so we can see each other. We're also getting the E3 picture, etc. So we're off and running. We're only going about 5 minutes or so, and we're doing various little turns and what have you, when all of a sudden there is a flash over my head. And I went, what the was that? And I react by rolling the aircraft hard right, pulling around, put chaff out as a first, and I'm now looking for any sign of a smoke trail because I saw nothing at all. And I'm looking down, can't see anything. I roll back left. I say to my nav, did you see something? Did you see, what was that? What was that? And I'm pulling round again to see if there's something on the left. And the reply I got was, oops, sorry. So I roll the wings level, and I mean, what do you mean by oops, sorry? And it turns out my nav was taking a photograph with his camera, and he forgot to inhibit his flash. Okay. At which point my leader's looking across at me and he radios up, are you okay? Are you all right? Because he's watching our jet move into some sort of breakdance routine for no apparent reason. I went, yeah, we're just settled down. Right, let's get our energy back again. Okay, right, we won't do that again, will we? No. We learnt about crew cooperation from that. Wow. The rest of the mission was fine, and several others after that. We went back to the tanker, refueled, and then we had our 1 hour back to Al-Kaj. And it was quite funny when we got back to the crew room and talked about it. But just for that moment, I thought, oh, referee, not now, not immediately. I've only just started. So there we go.
And when you landed, did you speak to your nav and say, like, what were you doing? Or was it kind of just like, oh, okay.
We had a chance to talk about it in the air. And he knew immediately what was wrong. You know,
right.
He should have told me. And 2, he should have made sure the flash wasn't, because it was broad daylight. You didn't need the flash. But if he'd even just told me he was about to do it, problem would have been solved. It's just that, not telling me. And of course, we're all keyed up thinking, and I get a flash. I think, what's going on? But these things happen, and as we went through the detachment, it got easier and easier because we just worked better, because we're always crewed together, we're always flying together, and that pays dividends when you work as a team. Conversely, the comms level goes down as you get better because you know what you're doing. But as I say, this was first time for both of us. We were a bit sort of, here we go. So there we are.
And on these sorties, were you probably tanked up as well? Like, did you have the big jugs on?
No, 1,500 litres tanks, not the 2250s. We had the 1,500 litre. Why? It's a compromise again between performance and endurance. The big jugs would allow us to not go to the tanker for so often or stay on task for longer, but the manoeuvrability with them is such that we'd almost, if things started to get hot, either with surface-to-air missiles or Iraqi aircraft, we would jettison them straight away. The compromise was the 1500s. Higher G limits when they're full, but we couldn't go so fast, and that wasn't really the factor. It was the G limits, but as well as giving us some fuel. So 1,500 litres, and then of course we had the TRD on board on the outboard pylon. We had a chaff dispenser on the other outboard pylon to balance, and then chaff and flares, and of course the full missile load. And it was hot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And was it normal to take up a camera on these sorties? Was it allowed, or was it kind of like sneak it in, sneak it in, in the cockpit?
Pretty much. I mean, there was no security problem in terms of taking photographs out of the cockpit. If you start taking photographs of the displays, the tactical display is not so bad. The radar most certainly not. The main problem was what you're doing with the camera. It would have to be a small camera that fits in your pocket. You don't want it rattling around the cockpit, particularly in the front. I mean, I have done it, and I had a small compact that I could keep in my pocket and take some photographs. But generally speaking, in those sorties, I never bothered because I was so busy. If it was kind of calm and quiet for a period, then the navigator would do it. Yeah, quite often. No, it was not really a problem as long as you didn't take pictures of the radar in particular inside.
So yeah, like when you landed, if they knew you took a camera up, but they're like, I want to see the pictures before they go anywhere. There was nothing like that.
No, not at all.
Okay.
It was only really if we thought we had captured something of interest, we might offer it to our squadron intelligence officer to have a look at. But there was no auditing. There was no checking that everything was fine, etc., etc. And there was quite a collection of images built up amongst the squadron as we went through these detachments. Most of them of an aircraft spotting type of nature, because there's quite a variety of aircraft, both at Al-Kaj and meeting on the tanker. It was quite interesting because there were a lot of US Navy aircraft coming up and going, particularly if we used one of the American tankers, we could have a Prowler, we could have Tomcats, we could have Hornets, we could have it was a B-1 one time.
Wow.
That was there. Just happened to be the way it was all scheduled. Quite often you'd see just British aircraft coming through, obviously the Eagles and the F-16s, and then on the ground with all the big stuff. So generally speaking, it was quite good from that side of things, but it was all very much a, shall I say, aircraft enthusiast magazine spotters type level that we had just for our own memories, etc., as well as the guys sitting around the squadron, etc., etc.
And when you were on that detachment or that sortie, were you in squadron? What squadron were you actually with? And was there squadron markings on the jet? I
was with Treble 1, and in fact all of my sorties during this period, so not discounting Gulf War 1, but the run-up, so 2000 onwards up to Gulf War 2 in 2003, all with Treble 1. The aircraft had no markings because they stayed out there, and we rotated through about, was it every 2 months or every 3, 4, it might have been every 4 months. The squadrons rotated through, and we left the aircraft and equipment there, and so the aircrew, ground crew went home at that stage, and then the new squadron came out and took over. The only markings that did appear, and it was actually one of our navigators on Treble 1 that instigated it, was he started to put names on the nose wheel door of World War One and World War Two aces.
Wow.
So like Paul, etc., etc., and I can't remember all the other ones, but he put McCurtain, and he used, and the number of kills that they got. So they appeared on those wheel doors. The ground crew did some funny cartoon type images on the side of the cockpit of some of them, like Desperate Dan and stuff like that, a la Americans in World War II. And I think that was, I don't know if it was Treble 1 ground crew or whichever, but they stayed on for the duration. The aircraft just had 2-letter tail codes to identify them, and that was it. So it became sort of a fleet rather than particular squadron type thing.
And obviously our viewers know you're 43 through and through. If you cut your in half, you're black and white. What was it like flying with Triple One?
Yeah, exactly. Across the runway with on the dark side, as we used to say. It was exactly the same as I described it once, like a Rangers supporter playing for Celtic or a Liverpool supporter playing for Everton. You know, Manchester United, Manchester City. There's a whole load of pairs you can pick. It was, by that stage we were much more unified than we were back in the Phantom days, and there was a lot more cross runway posting. And while I always wanted to get back to 43, No, I enjoyed my time on Treble One. I think it's the same as any football player. You change your tune as soon as you join the new club. This is the best club ever. Never mind what I said before.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But secretly, yeah, want to get back.
What a brilliant story, Roy. So thank you for sharing that. But our viewers will notice you're in a different office at the moment, and you're also you've gone a different way. You're into trains at the moment. Can you just tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we have relocated for family reasons from Scotland down to Norfolk. So I'm only about 8 miles away from Marham and the S35s, and of course Lakenheath just a bit further south. So yeah, that's our new locale at the moment. And as part of this relocation, I've always been interested in railways. My father and my brother have been lifelong railwaymen, and I have now got involved with the Mid-Norfolk Railway, which is a heritage line that runs between Dereham and Windham. And I have qualified as a signalman, which is great fun.
Nice.
Getting in the signal box, pulling levers and watching trains go past. It's the ultimate train set, so that's what I'm doing as well at the moment.
Yeah, it seems quite a crossover there between aviation and train railway enthusiasts. I think there's a guy called, I think it's Ian Black's brother, isn't it? He does all the pencil drawings or the drawings of the trains.
Stu Black.
Stu Black, yeah.
Ian's brother, Stu Black. Yes, he does. It's very similar to the Squadron Prince you've got behind you, and I know that Squadron Prince and Stu Black in the past have had, well, shall we say, discussions about copyright and what is what, etc. But he does the aircraft as well as trains, yes. Mm-hmm. And he's quite a train enthusiast as well. I think he lives up in Northumberland at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. And one last question from me, because I enjoy patches. I can see it in the back on your right side. What are the patches in the frames there, Roy?
Right, these are my 1,000 hours, 2,000 hours, 3,000 hours, 4,000 hours tornado patches. Nice. I've got them mounted, and underneath is where I actually achieved the hours and the date.
Wow.
And actually all four are in different places. I got 1,000 hours was, I can't remember the exact date, so I think it was 91 at Coningsby. 2,000 hours was while I was on the OEU, and that actually happened out at Nellis Air Force Base when we were on a trial.
Wow.
3,000 hours was with Treble One, and that happened down in the Falklands, and that could be another tornado tale for the future. And I just have to hang my head a wee bit, but that's one for the future if you just tuck that one away.
Oh, definitely.
And 4,000 hours was actually at Lookers on Treble One, and that was about 2006, I think it was. So yeah, I've got them mounted up there. And the other obvious thing just over my other shoulder, the big thing, I don't know if I've ever talked about it in the past, but there's some sort of suit framed on the wall, and that belonged to Sir Chris Hoy, the cyclist. It was his racing suit from the 2002 Manchester Commonwealth Games, when he got gold, won 3 golds for Scotland. Why have I got it? Well, shortly after that, he came to Lookers to publicise the Open Day. It was a 2003 Open Day, and I flew him in a jet. And it was all the publicity side of things. And as a thank you, he gave me that suit, which I never wore, but I got it framed to put it up. So
absolutely amazing.
And obviously went on to greater and greater things after that.
One last question before we wrap up this Tornado Tales here, Roy. Obviously, you're working with, doing the signals with the railway. Do you ever talk about your flying career? Do people interested, where your background was, or do you, vice versa? Do you ask them?
Yes, they are, and in fact, we have the senior signaller is called the signalling inspector. Every line has one, and he's basically the man that checks you out, qualifies you to go on a signal box, and then periodically checks you, just much like the Squadron QFI or CFS as we used to have. Anyway, this particular chap is a civilian flying instructor. He flies out of Southend, and he's actually ex-police, but he did civil flying, so he was extremely interested to talk about flying. the other guys like it, but when the two of us get together and obviously start talking flying all the time, not again. Here we go.
Absolutely. Well, brilliant, Roy. Well, thank you very much for coming on this episode of Tornado Tales, and yeah, we're wishing you luck on the railways, mate.
No bother. Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers.